Hey guys and gals, it's Popeye from FederalJack.com. I'm doing a special interview today with my friend Stephanie Kenzel. She's a local blogger here in Miami, and she's been all over the local political scene for about a year now here in North Miami Beach. And she's been getting flack from, first it was the retired mayor. He's no longer the mayor thanks to her and other concerned citizens. But the then mayor, Myron Rosner, and now she's getting flack from an even bigger adversary, bullies, you could say, and that would be the North Miami Beach Police Department. And it's all because of her coverage of the city council meetings and the budget debates and everything, and because she agrees, as well as a few other residents, most of the residents, that budget cuts are necessary and need to be made. And the police don't want that. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have all their toys and their pension plans and everything else. And I understand that they're upset, but the reality of things is that these cities took on too much responsibility and too much toys and too much debt over the past 10 years, and they can't afford it. And this goes back even further than that, but within the past 10 years, it's been really, ramped up since 9/11 with the whole war on terror and everything. So now cities can't afford it. People are being fiscally responsible, and they're saying, look, in reality, we can't afford this. And you get these union thugs, and then when I say union thugs, I mean cops and people that work for the union, but cops acting like thugs. And Stephanie's going to tell everybody all about what's been going on. Steph, if you could just give the listeners a quick little intro about yourself and how you got into the whole scene, and then go on with the story about the lack of funding for all this, and then what's been going on with you and the harassment and all the dirty deeds that the North Miami Beach Police have been up to.
Okay. Thank you, Popeye, for inviting me to your show. As you know, we've spoken quite a bit, and my past. Like I said, I call myself a former soccer mom, even though my kids didn't play soccer, they played baseball. But I've always been interested in politics, and of course, raising my children and having a job at the same time, I would watch politics from the sidelines, but I never really got involved until about 10 years ago. I started dipping my toe into the waters, and of course I started locally, and I'm a firm believer that all politics starts local. If you don't have control of your city hall, you can't expect to control Washington. And so I became very entrenched in my city here in North Miami Beach. I've been following them for about 10 years, sometimes closely, sometimes not, depending on what's going on in my life at the time. But for the past year, as you said, I have been firmly entrenched in the politics here in our city, especially how the city is spending our money, which is my biggest thing. Is they're stewards of our tax dollars, and it's up to us, the citizens, to ensure that our tax dollars are being spent wisely. If you have a house and you have an income and you have a budget, you're going to spend your money wisely, hopefully. Some people don't. But if you have a family, you want your dollars to stretch and you want to spend responsibly. Well, it's the same thing with your local government and all the way up to the federal government, which, as you know, Popeye, they are not spending responsibly up there at all. So anyways, I got involved about a year ago, like you said, and a friend of mine who I've known since childhood told me he likes the way I write, because I would always write letters to the editor, and I'd write letters to my government here, and I would write little essays, and he said, Steph, you write really, really well, and you should have a blog. And he'd been telling me I should have a blog for a while, and finally one day he opened a website, and he paid for it, and it's called votersopinion.com, and I started writing my blogs, and it's just been one thing after another. Like you said, you mentioned about the former mayor. This guy is corrupt beyond all recognition, and not only corrupt, but a really nasty man, a nasty, nasty man. And he was not very well liked in this city, and I was on him. I tailed him like a hound, and I got so much dirt. I became very good at investigative reporting, which is not even what I do for a living. I'm a secretary, but when you need to do something and you feel that your rights are being violated, and you feel that someone is being corrupt, and not your government is not running properly, you find it inside yourself to do what you have to do. And that's where it came from. My buttons were pushed, and he pushed the wrong buttons, and I was very instrumental in helping him get booted out in the last election in May. We have a great mayor now, somebody I've known for 8 years, more than 8 years, and he is a conservative. He's a fiscal conservative, and Popeye, I believe you know him personally, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
George Vallejo. He's an amazing man. He's not a career politician. He's never run for anything, and stepped right in and ran for mayor, and is turning our city around and doing the right thing finally. The right thing, unfortunately, for the residents is the wrong thing according to the cops. And these guys have become vicious. These guys have become so completely out of control. It's I should say it's scary, but if I was scared, I'd be backing down. I'm not scared. I'm mad. I do not intimidate easily. And these people, these cops have tried to intimidate me, and it's backfired every time they do, because I just keep coming. I'm like a pit bull. I mean, I back up everything I say with facts, everything. I've got my facts. I've got my files. I do not go out there and just make up stuff. Of course, I'm also an entertainer, so I'll joke around. I like to write humor. Actually, I really like to write humor more than anything else. So I've been able to combine my investigative reporting, but with a touch of humor. And I, believe it or not, I have a very big following here in North Miami Beach, which surprises me. It surprises me because I write for me, and I write for the residents if they care to read me. But it's just funny because so many people read my blog. I mean, all the employees, and a lot of people. I'll be in Publix or Walgreens, and somebody that I've never met before comes up to me and says, "I love your blog." I'm like, "Okay, hi, who are you?" And it's like, but the thing is, people are dying for the truth. They want the truth. They're fed up with being fed lies and bullshit from their government, and you need people like me. I'm not the only blogger. There's some really great bloggers down here in South Florida that really were my role models, and they just do an amazing job. And this is where the future of journalism is. I really believe that, because you won't get the truth from the mainstream media. I mean, you just won't. They have an agenda. I don't have an agenda. I do have an agenda. My agenda is to bring truth to the world, to the residents, and uncover any shadows in the government.
But that's good. That's how it's going to get done, from the ground up.
Exactly. It's on the ground. It starts down here in North Miami Beach, in my little house. Starts right here. And if it doesn't start with us, if we people do not take a stand, and if it doesn't start with us, we may as well kiss America goodbye. We have to be vigilant. And that's me. I know I sound crazy to some people, but
no, my listeners
will.
My listeners will understand you 1,000%.
Okay.
And I can say it's for me it's nice. I'm way deeper down the rabbit hole than you are, and you're already waking up and saying to me the things you said to me off air, like, we live in a police state, and I'm like, yeah, we do. But see, I could say that to you 1,000 times, Steph, and it won't sink in until you have an experience that it comes along and it pulls the veil off your eyes, and that's what's happened. That's why
exactly.
That's why it's for you. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going on.
Yeah, and it's funny because I did tell you a story last night about at my office in Fort Lauderdale where I work, and I told you about a run-in I had with, apparently it turned out to be a road cop. Because the police department in Fort Lauderdale, at least my experiences with them, which has been very minimal because I only work there, they are very professional. They seem to be a very professional organization. They're very respectful. I've dealt with the chief. I've dealt with the captains. It's a whole different mindset than North Miami Beach. Now, I can't say that they're like that all the time, but the times that I've dealt with them, they're very, very professional. And those are the kind of police that I would love to have here in North Miami Beach. But like I said, I did have a run-in with a police officer, and when I complained to the chief of police of Fort Lauderdale, and that's a big department, that's nothing like ours. I mean, that's a huge city. He gave me a personal response. They found out that this cop was not where he was supposed to be, and when he came to me to harass me, he obviously didn't know who he was dealing with, but he didn't know that I was going to check up and find out if he was supposed to be there. And he wasn't even supposed to be near my office. He was supposed to be somewhere else, but he was called in by a pill mill that he had done some off-duty work for that I'd been having run-ins because I ran them out of my office building. And so they called him and said, go talk to this woman. She's given us a hard time. Shows up on my at my office, at my door, in full uniform, with his gun, with his badge, and starts being very belligerent to me. And I said to him, I go, what is this, a police state? You know? And he goes, no. And I go, you mean not yet? So I escorted him out the door. He said, you need to leave those people alone, those tenants. And I said, okay, thank you. I let him out. I locked the door, and I sat down, and I wrote a letter to the chief of police. And I said, I do not expect to be treated this way by an officer. And like I said, as it turns out, he wasn't supposed to be there. He had a different area that he was supposed to be patrolling, and he was not dispatched to me through Central Dispatch. This was something he did on his own. And I understand that he was, I don't know what his punishment was, what they do, but he definitely went on his record. And that was my first inkling, however small it was, that we are treading on very, what is the word? Shallow water?
Thin ice.
What is it? Thin ice. I know, sometimes I mix my metaphors. This country is headed towards a police state if we don't stop it. You know, that was just one little tiny incident of one little cop that is not typical of Fort Lauderdale. But unfortunately, it's becoming typical here in North Miami Beach. And this is going to stop.
Yeah, recently there was a shooting of a mentally retarded man.
Yeah, there were actually 2 shootings. Out of the last 4 shootings in North Miami Beach, shooting deaths, you know, the cops like to tell us if we fire 17, there's 17 cops that are slated for layoff, and I believe they got their pink slips either yesterday or today because of the budget cuts. But they've been claiming that if we fire these 17 cops out of a department of 116 or 117, we're not even sure, we can't get a real number from the police department, that crime is going to be exponentially worse. Meanwhile, North Miami Beach has one of the highest crime rates in South Florida, in Dade and Broward counties. And, you know, it can't get worse. How can it get worse? You know, if we have all this horrible crime, then what are all you 117 police officers doing? How are you justifying your pay to begin with?
After you talk about the shootings, you can get into, you know, exactly how this whole thing started with the fight between the police department and, you know, like the city council, George, and then inadvertently they go after you now.
Well, okay, we'll go there because the shootings are a separate issue. But out of the last 4 shootings, 2 of the people died by police bullets. Okay, so we're, you know, out of 2 out of 4 shootings,
that's a 50% ratio.
It's a 50% ratio. You have just as much chance of getting shot by a cop here than as getting shot by a criminal. And the 2 that were shootings that were civilian shootings, they were personal. It's not like there's rogue gang members driving by with machine guns.
Yeah, we don't have gang, you know, drive-by shootings and stuff in North Miami Beach. There are robberies and stuff, but
there's robberies.
The murders are usually personal here.
They're personal, and the 2 that are recent, and I'm talking about the recent ones. One appears to be gang-related, and it was 2 young men. Unfortunately, one died, 17 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And there are gangs here. But it's not like they're running through the streets, you know, like you think of gangs like in New York or Los Angeles. It's not like that.
Rephrase it. There could be gang-related deaths, but it's not like drive-by shootings out in the middle of the street. If someone gets shot, it's usually in their house or in their own front yard or something like that, and it's a fight between 2 people.
And it's a fight. That's what happened with this one. It was a fight between 2 maybe gang members. I'm just guessing there because, you know, they're the right age for the gangs around here. But, you know, this isn't the city of Miami, where there happen to be stray gunfire and innocent people get killed. I mean, that hasn't happened in North Miami Beach, to my recollection, since I've lived here. You know what I'm saying? You know, we're called inner city, but we're not really inner city, if you know what I mean. You know, not yet anyway.
No, I could take, you know, if you want to get inner city, you go down to
Liberty City or around.
Liberty City is the worst. It's actually
exactly.
rated like the worst city in the last year. It got the #2 worst city in the United States.
In the United States, I'm not surprised, but we're not near there. We're much further north than down in Liberty City.
Yeah, no, it's not as bad up here. I mean, it's bad, but
exactly.
It's not as bad.
Right, and the cops would have you believe that our crime rate is just as bad. And don't forget, Liberty City is actually part of the city of Miami. So it's actually a neighborhood. It's not a city into itself. So the crime rate in Miami, really, if you add all the residents of Miami and then you include the crime rate in Liberty City, that little microcosm there, then the crime rate isn't that bad, because not all of Miami is as bad as Liberty City, if you know what I'm saying.
Miami's been cleaned up a lot. Liberty City, they left Liberty, you know, Liberty City got left to rot. That's what happened. City elders left it to rot, and then, you know, the people there don't have much, you know, they don't have many hopes as it is, and then most of them are, you know, they don't care about anything because look at where they live. So and there's nobody stepping up to the plate. The city elders are all corrupt, so that's what you get. And we have I would say in North Miami Beach, there used to be, we were maybe on the road to that, you know, that kind of corruption, but because of people like you and George and Councilwoman Barbara Kramer, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm in awe of Barbara. Okay, I really like her. She's an awesome woman. And when she first met me, like to talk face to face, it was to yell at me. And she had she really has chutzpah. She's this tiny little thing. She got in my face, you know. And then later on, when she realized she was wrong, like a day later, she called me up. We talked. She was the nicest woman I've ever met. And since then, she has gone out of her way to help us get information like about the fluoride issue and everything. Like she's waking up. She's introduced me to people. She introduced me to you.
Right.
And when I talked to her,
she's like a little powerhouse.
Well, you know what I like about her is, like, she even said the first thing that she pushed for term limits, and she was like, I don't want to have to do this forever. I don't want to be a career politician. I'm just a pissed off citizen.
She's not a career politician, exactly.
Well, that's what I admire about her, because most of these people they get into this position and they're like, oh, I'm a city council member now. You know what I mean?
Well, we only have 3 right now out of 7 that are career politicians, and we've got to get them out of there. They've been there for a really long time. They're the 3 that voted against the budget, and it was for political reasons. We've got 4 newbies, non-politicians, in Beth Spiegel, Barbara Kramer, George Vallejo, and Marlene Martel. And not one of them have ever been a politician before. Barbara and Beth ran in 2009 and were elected for the very first time. And then this year, they were reelected for a second term, and the term was only 2 years. And then, of course, we have George Vallejo and Marlene Martel, and they're brand new to politics. And they all stepped up to the plate because they didn't like the way government was running. And they said, there's something wrong here, and we have the power to change it because we're regular people. We are residents of North Miami Beach. We are citizen activists, and all 4 were actively involved in the city, in politics like me, except I won't run for office because my blog has taken off to the point where I can't turn it off. I'm very opinionated, and if you become a council person, you have to be unbiased, and you have to be careful what you say in public. And I'm not saying that you're lying, but you can't really openly say a lot of things that I can say on my blog, for example. You know what I mean? And for me to run for office, and a lot of people have asked me to, and I really don't have a desire to, but I said, look, if I ran for office and got elected, God forbid, that would be the end of voters' opinion, because I couldn't say what I say from the dais.
As a mayor, you can't sit up there and accuse people of things like, say, hey, you're a corrupt scumbag. Whereas on your blog, freedom of speech, you can say you're a corrupt scumbag, which you have every right to. But as a council member, you have to. I mean, you'd love to say that, but it's if you do that, you're showing your constituency that you're not professional. And that you can't separate the two, and that look, as many times as you want, probably if you were a politician, you'd want to say, F you, you scumbag. You can't. You maybe say that, in a personal conversation that's not being recorded or something like that. But when you're in front of the constituency, you have to be a little more professional, And
Exactly.
your blog is like a breath of fresh air when it comes to local politics, because it's you're not a drone. You're not like, it's not like reading the Miami Herald. It's, on the ground, in-depth reporting from someone that just wants to get out what she sees going on, and let people know. And I publish your stuff. I do it because I like, I love your blog.
Thank you.
You know how many people I know around here?
So many hits.
You know how many people I know around here, Steph, that have said to me, dude, I didn't know that you covered local politics when I started publishing your stuff. And I was like, well, if, when somebody would send me an article, I would, or if I noticed it or something, but I'd take on so much. I said, and then after I met you, it was like, wow, I don't have to, I can go to her and I can look through your stuff. And you constantly, every time you publish an article, you send it to me. And then I go through it.
You're on my mailing list, yeah.
It's awesome.
You want to republish it. And, I just write how I feel. I mean, I see it, I write what I see, and I write what I hear, and I add my own little opinion, because it's voters' opinion, of course. It's funny because the cops have taken to reading my articles, and my comment section has actually become a forum between cops, and there are some good ones. I don't want it to sound like our entire department is corrupt and nasty, because there are a few good cops. There's
117 people, so out of 117 people, you're bound to have 15 or 20 scumbags.
Right, exactly. And there are some that are really, really good people. And the funny thing is, there was this one cop, and I think you might have read that column that I wrote. He sent me a column, F you, Kenzel, you're a crazy woman. And he started like ranting. And instead of publishing that, and I do this sometimes, instead of publishing his comment, because, I'm the moderator, so I can approve a comment or not. Instead of approving it as a comment to whatever blog I had written, I decided to write a whole new blog about it. And I publish funny pictures with my blogs, and the people love the pictures I publish. I just Google all these thoughts of mine, and I find these really hilarious pictures. And this cop is a cop. I don't know his name because they don't use the real names, but his screen name was Yeah Right. So I responded to his comment, and I did it in a humorous way, and I called him Officer Yeah Right. And I rebutted a lot of what he said, but I tried to, make it funny and whatever. And now he's one of my regular commenters on my blog, and he's gone from, I hate you, you're a bitch, F you, Kenzel, and now he's like so docile, not docile, because he still writes how he feels, but he's very respectful, I should say. And he'll even say, I don't always agree with Stephanie's opinion, but I have to say she does her research, and she doesn't talk about things that she doesn't know about. And I'm the first to admit, listen, I don't know this. I will look it up. I will try to research it, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I know what I don't know. And I think that people, not just cops, but everybody respects that. I'm not perfect. And if I write something erroneous, based on information that was erroneous or based on my misinterpretation of things that I hear, then I'm the first to apologize. I'm wrong.
I can actually speak from personal experience.
Exactly.
You thought you wrote a little article about me like a year ago, where you thought I was a nut and everything.
I thought you were a nut based on what I saw on my computer.
Exactly. But what happened after you talked to me? You actually printed a retraction and said I was really nice person, blah 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 blah. And I was like, wow, she actually. I was impressed, because most people don't do that, Stephanie. Most people are like,
I do that because I have a problem. I'm not perfect, and I also am very quick to judge. That's me. That's part of my.
I think most of us are, though.
Right, and I tend to judge books by their covers because I find people very fascinating. I love watching people. I love writing about people. And my first impression of people, 99% of the time, turns out to be correct. I have to tell you, I have a very good radar, but sometimes I'm wrong. And maybe not 99. We'll go with 90. But the thing is, when I'm wrong, I will eat humble pie. I have no problem eating humble pie. It tastes really good with lots of sugar on it. And
But that's an admirable quality, because you know what? Honestly, it is, because how many people, when they don't admit that they're wrong? Like, I'm the same way. I'm old school, where if I'm wrong, even if I don't want to admit it, and it might be a bite in the ass to me, I'll do it because that's the right thing to do. And that's how people
I always say, do the right thing.
Exactly. You want to earn someone's respect, you have to earn it.
Absolutely.
And look what happened with the cop. Rather than argue with him and be an ass to him, you responded with humor injected into it, trying to bring a little levity. Because you realize that it's not, this us versus them mentality that they have, and they are, like I told you, that's instilled into them for another reason. That is to bring about a police state, and the only way they can do that is if you have the military and the local cops thinking that the citizens are scum, and that it's their job to clean them out, and that's what it's become. Policing used to be, like I told you, when I was a kid, the detectives in my town knew my mother. I got caught lighting garbage cans on fire when I was 11 years old. They didn't bring me to jail. They put me in the back of the car, and they're like, "We're bringing you home." And I was like, "No, take me to the police station. My mother's going to whoop my ass."
I know.
And it's not like that anymore. Now it's if there was a kid in my situation now, in 2011, he'd be tased, beaten, and arrested. I mean, and they'd call him a terrorist. That's the way it would be, and it's out of
they don't treat him right anymore. But there's people, grown-ups, are my age, or somewhere even younger or a little older, that really have never learned things like to think the consequences of your actions through. There's, for every action there is a reaction. You don't live in a vacuum. How did
you get involved with the whole being, I guess, the target of the police? Because
wow,
I mean, you didn't really do anything. It's not like you went over and pissed on their front door. It's not like you called them any names. All you did was talk about the budget. And so how did you end up on the radar?
Well, first of all, I don't know, to be honest with you. I'd have to go back and read whatever blogs it was that got their attention. But I basically am talking about fiscal responsibility, and I would talk about, budget cuts, and things need to be cut. And then I heard that the police had, what I heard at the time, that they had approximately 50% of the budget, which, as it turns out, it was closer to 43%. But at the time, we were all under, we had heard it was 50%. Now, if the manager has to cut $8 million out of the entire city's budget, the whole general fund, his intention was, if the police are 50% of the budget, then they need to take 50%, they need to eat 50% of the deficit, which at the time is $4 million. And so that's how it started. And actually, I didn't start writing about them until they started misbehaving. It wasn't like I taunted them or I said, nah, you got to take $4 million. I didn't even I was thinking in terms of bean counting, okay? And I was just, okay, well, the police have to take 50% of the budget. Public Works, say, and I'm just throwing out a number, say it's 30% of the budget, they have to take 30% of the, they have to share 30% of that $8 million, whatever it was. And I was very logical about it. And I was thinking in terms of a bookkeeper, which is what I do. And they did not want to take their share of the cut. They absolutely did not want to take their share of the cut. And so what happened was, I went to one of the city held about 9 budget workshops, and there were about 6 council meetings, I believe, so maybe more, because it started in July, and here we are in September, and the budget just passed this past Tuesday. So however many council meetings, twice a month. And I would say 6 council meetings, 9 budget workshops. These cops started coming to the city council meetings and staring down the residents. They'd show up in their blue union T-shirts, okay, and they'd be giving everybody the stink eye, and they'd be filling City Hall. The
residents as well as the council, correct?
Well, the residents couldn't sit. They stormed. I mean, they would take the seat, every available seat, mainly in the back. They would line the back of the room like you see these you know what I'm talking about. I don't even think of the word, but
No,
like
I know
shoulder
that.
to
I can
shoulder.
just picture, because I know what the inside
Right.
of the council chambers looks like, so
And,
I can just picture they were probably lined
okay,
all along the back wall there and along that side wall where the
exactly,
doors are.
shoulder to shoulder, almost like a wall. I kind of made fun of them in my blog. I call the blue sea, the sea of blue. I don't know. I made some kind of crack remark, because they were acting like idiots. I call it as I see it, Popeye. If you're going to act like an idiot, I'm going to call you an idiot. If you're going to act like Myron, for example, he was a dirtbag. So I called him a dirtbag. He did really shitty things, and he he came after me with code enforcement, calling code enforcement on me, and he thought that I was going to back down. And if you read my blogs at the time, and I think you said you did, that only made me step it up. You're going to call code enforcement on me?
Well, that's when I started. Like when you started sending me your stuff, and you were like, "Hey, check this out," and I was like, "Wow, this guy's stalking her in his van." And for the listeners, I know you guys probably don't know this, but the mayor, or the former mayor of North Miami Beach, Myron Rosner, stalked Stephanie in her van and others, and took photos of their property, and then would look at it for any code infractions, and then send code enforcement. He used the police, as his little lapdogs to scare his critics.
The code enforcement department is under the police department, so it was his own little personal army, and
which is creepy. Which is really creepy, because that's the David Icke calls it the totalitarian tiptoe. That's you're tiptoeing right towards complete tyranny with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, except that he was a putz. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, he didn't cover his tracks too well. See, Myron he did everything himself.
Right. Well, he didn't have any friends. I mean, it wasn't like he could, recruit anybody, because by that time he had already run out of anybody who was even sympathetic to him. And but it was funny because he went into my backyard and took pictures of my backyard, my little deck or whatever. And my husband was really furious because what Myron didn't know, obviously, is that my daughter's bedroom window is facing, is right there. So he made a big deal out of it, and he goes, he's taking pictures of my daughter's bedroom window. Myron would have no way of knowing who sleeps in what room here, but he would park in the alley and take pictures of my backyard. And at the time, we had a chain link fence, and that doesn't do anything but keep dogs out, and stray dogs, or keep dogs in. Actually, that's why we have it. But now we have a 6-foot security fence, and I even blogged about that because I said we have a peeping Tom mayor-proof fence now, and I loved making fun of him because he was such a jackass. He was, I'm not going to go into it now, but the things that this guy would do and think he could get away with it. But the nail in the coffin for him is when he tried to commit campaign finance fraud with his reporting, and I uncovered a $30,000 or $20,000 for his signs. Remember all those monster bus bench signs that he had, and he would bully city vendors into donating, and so he bullied a city vendor who owned the bus benches into putting his signs on the bus benches and didn't charge him for them. So I found out by pouring through his campaign treasurer's report that he never reported them. And so I reported that to the Florida Elections Commission, and that investigation is still ongoing. It's still being investigated, and this is months later. But as you know, the wheels of justice move very slowly. But this guy is a cartoon caricature of he tries as hard as he tries to be bad. He's just too stupid to be as bad as he thinks he is. And so we got him voted out. And it was great. That night at City Hall when they counted the votes and George Vallejo kept winning precinct after precinct after precinct. If you had been there, you would have loved it because I lost my voice that night. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Everybody was laughing at me because I was like crazy. And Myron, at the back of the auditorium, he slinked out before the final precincts were read because he knew it was over. And he didn't even stay for, he just sneaked out like the little sewer rat that he is. And to this day, he still can't believe he lost. And this was in May. we're in September. He still can't accept the fact that he lost the election. It's blowing his mind. And he's filed 11 complaints against George so far. That none of them have stuck. But, a campaign issues. Filed 11 complaints against him.
And that'll go against him too eventually, because he'll become Myron Rosner, the guy who cries wolf, and nobody's going to believe what he says.
Let's put it this way: he'll never eat lunch in this town again. He has no friends. He has no allies. Nothing. And the thing is, you do the right thing, and good things happen. You do the wrong thing, and eventually you pay the price. And that's pretty much how it works.
Well, I got a question for you. What's the deal with the police chief being fired? Now, I never understood the full details of that. I know they said there was some internal thing, but the police chief of North Miami Beach ended up getting fired. So right now you have like a captain acting as the chief, right?
Yeah, I know what happened. Well, I don't know every detail because, of course, the only two people in that room that night or that day that he was fired were the chief and the city manager. And what the chief is saying, the chief's description, the former chief's description of what went down and the city manager's description of what went down don't match entirely. But the city manager isn't going to badmouth anybody. He's just not like that. He's tough. He's great. I think he's awesome, and he's very tactful. He doesn't badmouth anybody. But the word is, from what I've heard, he gave the chief the order, the directive to cut $4 million from his budget, and the chief balked, and they disagreed. And I'm not sure, there were some other issues that they disagreed about, and the chief was in his office, and Mr. Bonner, the city manager, told him this is the way it's going to be, whatever it was, and the chief said, no, I don't like it, and he said, okay, well then, pack your bags and go. I don't know what it was, but I know it had to do with a disagreement over possibly the budget cuts. I'm sure that was the major disagreement, and maybe the way the chief wanted to go about it. I don't know what his plan was. He was supposed to give a presentation, I think, the next night at city council of how he was going to cut the budget. So I can only guess that the manager and the chief didn't see eye to eye on what the plan was. See, what happens is a manager will give department heads a directive. You need to cut your budget by X number of dollars and bring me your proposal. And what happens is the department chief has to go back, the department head, whether it's the chief of police, the head of public works, the head of financing, whatever department, they have to go back to their department. They have to review their own little budget because each department has a mini budget, a subsection, and then they present to the city manager how they plan to allot their funds based on the new amount. And now everybody's having budget cuts, so most of the time it does involve laying off people. There's just so much extra money that can be cut before you go into salaries, you dip into salaries. This is just a fact of life.
Well, I feel bad that people lose their jobs, and
I do too.
It sucks that cops have to lose their jobs. It sucks that anybody has to lose their jobs, not just police officers. So they're not special. Anybody that gets fired, there's other people from the city that are getting fired too.
Exactly.
And it sucks that all those people are losing their jobs. But the fact is, the city overgrew itself, and then you had people that were running it that were corrupt and stealing money that no one knows where the hell it went. So, officially knows where the hell it went. There's no paper trail. There's
no paper trail. Don't forget the former city manager who was summarily dismissed, thank God. What happened was he would propose a budget, which he did for the last 2 years, a year ago this time, and then 2 years before that. That was really, the residents were questioning it. Some of the council people were questioning it because it didn't seem that we had the revenue that this man said we had. And I think at the time he said $53 million was the budget. And we were all going, where does he think that money's coming from? The real estate bubble had already burst. The ad valorem taxes had already been lowered. There wasn't that much money coming in. What we didn't know at the time, and we know now, is he was dipping into the reserves of both the water department. We have our own water department, as you know, but our reserves from the water department and from the general budget, the general fund. And he depleted the reserves, all of them, every last dime. And if you read my blog from yesterday or last night that I wrote, what the mayor had said at the end of the council meeting on Tuesday night is we have a $4.8 million deficit in the water budget alone. And there's something like $51 million of needed repairs for the pipes, the water pipes, that we can't pay for right now. We'd have to borrow that money. If something breaks, we can't maintain it right now. We don't have any money to go in and replace the pipes before they break right now. What happens is once the pipes break, we're going to have to borrow money to pay for them. I mean, that's not a way to run a city, but we don't have the money. And then there's something like, I forget how many miles of sewer pipe that need replacing, and that was something like another 30,000 or something. I have it in my blog, all the exact figures. The thing is, if you don't have reserves, you can't pay for this stuff. But what happened about a month ago, the Fitch rating companies, you know how the country's credit rating was just downgraded thanks to the idiot-in-chief up there in Washington, well, which he blames on the Republicans, of course. The same thing happened in North Miami Beach with our water department. We got a downgrade by Fitch. And the reason they downgraded our credit rating is because we had no reserves. And the thing is, you have to have a prudent reserve, and you also have to, be able to pay for any needed repairs, and that's part of the reserve. So they downgraded us. So not only are we going to have to borrow money if something breaks, or I should say when something breaks, because it will, you need to maintain your infrastructure. We're going to have to borrow at a higher rate of interest because we're now downgraded. And what really is aggravating, and I also wrote this in one of my blogs, the union president, Mike Pond, who is the world's biggest asshole in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there, he went before the council a couple meetings ago and said, and here you are listening to Fitch, a bond rating company, telling you, you like, he was like denigrating the council because they were taking seriously the fact that we were downgraded. And he said, you better be careful where you get your advice from. And I think, in fact, that's on one of my blogs where I had him a video of him that my webmaster put up of the council meeting. Do you recall seeing that?
Yes, I saw the video.
Yeah, right?
I know what you're talking about.
If you watch that video, he's telling the council.
Well, I mean, Fitch and all them they're criminal.
People.
They're all criminals in their own right. He probably, what he's not doing is he's not explaining. He probably doesn't have the same. He doesn't look at them as bad guys for the reason that they really are. He probably looks at it for some idiotic reason. Okay, but the point is, you should take serious the fact that they did downgrade it because, like it or not, whether or not they are criminals, in which these rating companies are involved with these mega banks and these foreign corporations.
They have to do with the Fed, right?
With the Federal Reserve, and they're part of that big problem. But you know what? Right. When they downgrade your credit, it doesn't matter. Right now, the way the game is set, it's run by their rules, and they just said, you guys, they slapped your hand and said, now you guys have to borrow at a higher rate. So it doesn't matter whether or not they're criminals. You're still getting screwed, so you should be pissed.
Well, we are pissed, and that's the funny thing.
Just wait, does he live in the city? See, this is the key thing that when I talked about. The union rep and most of these cops that work in the city don't live in the city, so they don't have to deal with you guys.
On our department that live in the city, 2 out of 117, I'm told. That's what.
So do you think they really care about the city, or do you think they just look at it like a job?
Not. And that's the point. They do not care. And in fact, in my blog last night, I mentioned the Fitch, downgrading, and like you said, whether or not it's an evil institution isn't the point. We're still going to suffer the consequences, until we can change and abolish the Fed, hopefully one day. But the thing is, you still have to pay the extra interest. You can disagree with Fitch. You can disagree with all the bond rating companies. You can disagree with the Fed. But as long as they're in existence, you got to play by the rules. And that's all there is to it. And I wrote in my blog, of course they don't care about our credit rating getting screwed up because they don't live here. It's not their credit rating. What do they care? But the worst part is they will go on the Miami Herald comment section, or they will go on my blog, or they'll go on that vile Leo Affairs blog, and they will sit there and make all these comments like, well, as soon as I leave, and I'm just paraphrasing here, okay, because they didn't use the word cesspool, that's my word, but, your little hellhole or your cesspool or whatever it is of a city, and I'll go back to my city. Most of them live in Pembroke Pines or other nice places in Broward County, by the way, and I'll go back to my city where my kids can play outside safely without getting hit by a drive-by, and that's almost like saying, you people, you're just dirt. And one guy even said, give me my 100K, F you, I'm out of here. Like, give me my salary, and when I'm gone, I'm gone. And how do you think residents feel that are being told that their neighborhoods are unappealing? That's another one they wrote. Unappealing. It's unappealing to live in North Miami Beach. All the neighborhoods are unappealing, and they're all criminal infested people. And I'm like, dude, why?
Well, apparently they're not doing their jobs then. Maybe they should all get fired. Maybe the only cops that should be left are the good ones, the ones that have probably been on for more than 5 or 10 years. Okay?
Right. Well, the problem is unions in charge. So we can't fire the bad ones because there's union.
But see,
rules,
that's a big problem. That's a large problem. Okay, I used to be a union member myself, and I believed in the union until I myself got screwed over by my shop steward, and I realized how crooked they really were. And then after that, I was like, screw the unions. Okay,
right.
But I had to learn my that was back when I was like 19, 20 years old, and
right.
I had to learn for myself. Now I have a problem with. I understand that police and fire need to have a voice so that they, the city can't summarily screw them at the whim of some, if you have maybe a bad politician or, some career politician scumbag because he wants to line his own pockets.
Right,
but
and that's what
they
I've never worked for a union. Right.
Well, how come?
But they won't give concessions.
How come they take cuts across the board? How come they didn't say, you know what, we don't need SWAT gear. North Miami Beach doesn't really need a SWAT team.
They don't want to give up those toys.
They don't need whatever they have. They don't need it. Do they need assault rifles in this town? No.
They claim they do.
No, they want them because they want to be able to shoot people at will. Real cops, and I say this because I was I was a fireman for 6 years, but I wanted to be a police officer when I was a kid till I realized what they were turning into. Okay, but the cops when I was a kid, they didn't shoot people. First of all, they didn't want to have to shoot anybody because there was too much paperwork involved. Okay, and they realized that you didn't have to solve everything with beating the crap out of somebody or a gun. One of my friends was a sergeant for over 30 years in a police department in New Jersey. Okay, and I said to him, "Did you ever shoot anybody?" He goes, "All the times I ever drew my weapon, I never had to shoot anybody." He goes, "I never shot anybody." I said, "Did you have the urge to?"
North Miami Beach.
Well, no. See, you come down here. South Beach is the same way. The South Beach Police Department, they shoot everybody. It's like a video game to these guys.
I know. It's really
I know some South cops, and they're stand-up guys. They're good guys, but again, you have a department that's got we'll use North Miami Beach for an example. You have 117 police. You're gonna have scumbags. Not all of them, but you're gonna have ones that are bad.
Whenever you put 100 people in a room, you're gonna have a percentage of dirtbags. I mean,
unfortunately now,
statistics.
Unfortunately now, as I told you, the police are trained much differently. So the new guys coming in are trained, and it's still the same. You get these guys they're beaten up in high school. They got picked on. Now they want to show the world I'm a cop. I know people like
that. There's a certain mentality, of what it takes to be a cop. I don't know what it is because I certainly don't have it. But they're different from the general population. I mean,
they took stuff to defend the Constitution and the general public. Okay, so I have a problem. Look, if you're gonna be disrespectful
by saying that, I don't think I was defending bad behavior.
I know.
Yeah, they're different from us.
In general,
they're wired different.
Yeah, they are wired different because they're taught different. Yeah. They're being taught that the citizens are criminal. They're being taught that their citizens are scum. They need to weed them out. I mean, that stuff is ridiculous. I had somebody submit an article to me. They had the original author said, "Hey, this is from my blog. Would you repost it on your site? And after I read it, and I was like, yeah, it's a really good article. And it was talking about the militarization of police departments, especially the ramping up of it over the past 10 years. I had a cop, he copy and pasted the same response into mine and onto the original poster's website. But the cop was like, he was in charge of a SWAT unit, and he was just so robotic in his answer. We're at a war. I'm quoting him, Steph. We're at a war in this country. We have a war with scumbags in this country. Well,
that sounds like what they post on their website and on the Herald. Even,
that's what they're saying. They think
it's funny.
They're dirtbags, and that they need to herd us out and treat us like cattle because we can't do it on our own. That's not what their job is. Their job.
Well, that sounds like the government in general, the way that it's a nanny, they want to have it a nanny state.
They need little jackboots. You need little thugs to enforce your crooked unconstitutional rules. So look what they've done. Now, the key is to try to wake these police up with organizations like the Oath Keepers and stuff. But these cops, the older cops that I know, there are cops that have, they've said that they disagree with what's going on and everything. And
I do too.
I agree with the older cops with that. But these younger ones, these little punks that are out there making comments, for the listeners, you guys have to understand. Stephanie goes on the news a day and a half, 2 days ago, and the next day she gets yesterday she gets a little a posting, like a thread opened up about her on
the
LEO, whatever the hell blog. It's a law enforcement blog.
Yeah, I'll send you the link so you can put it on your website.
Yeah, well, the article, I'm going to throw it in the video. I'll flash a picture of it so that
and the things they wrote, the nasty things, and attacking my husband, who happens to be a retired firefighter and does have a pension, which was negotiated years ago, and his pension is with the state of Florida, and it's fully funded. It's not a city pension, and our city is broke right now. My husband's pension is fully funded. He worked over 30 years. These cops their contract says they only have to work 20 years, which is ridiculous. And then they get an 8-year drop, which is another story, which I won't go into. But I mean, they have a lot more than my husband got. Trust me. But that's not even the point. The point is, what my husband got. But
they shouldn't be bringing your husband up into a fight about it. See, like I said, they use straw man and ad hominem arguments with you because they can't defend your position, which is a very strong argument that, look, it sucks that people have to lose their jobs, but the previous governments overspent, and now we have to clean up the mess. So sorry, but it has to be done. We're asking, maybe if they got rid of some assault rifles, and maybe if they sold other equipment and made cuts here or there, maybe doubled up in a car, maybe you'd be able to save that stuff. But they don't want to get rid of their toys. So because they want their toys, they sacrifice their own friends, and then they cry foul that it's the city's fault, and it's not. Okay,
it's not.
And I'm not picking on anybody. I know it sucks. I feel bad for anybody that loses their job. It sucks, man. But luckily, they are certified police officers in the state, so they can go to other departments. They can go elsewhere. At least they may have a chance at getting a job, as opposed to some of the other city employees that are losing their job. But I'm not seeing them losing their jobs at all. Look, it sucks all across the board.
But they don't care about the other employees.
But look how they're acting. They're attacking you personally. They're putting stuff about you, and they're acting like a bunch of 3-year-olds. That's not how police act. Police are supposed to act with respect, with honor, with devotion to duty, with some professionalism. They're an embarrassment to their badge. Okay, so maybe it's good that they're losing their jobs, because you don't want that type of person to be a police officer, because they're going to abuse their power.
The one that started attacking me on the Channel 7 interview that I gave yesterday, and he starts attacking me right on the comment section, the forum there, about my husband and his golden parachute. And this is another thing, and this is quite laughable. They're calling my husband. They said he drinks. He's a drunk. Now, my husband is a very laid-back guy. He's not like me at all. It's very funny, because when he talks with almost a drawl, because he thinks before he speaks. He's not like me at all. I can speak at the top of my head. He doesn't. He thinks a lot before he speaks. And so they're saying, oh, he's drunk all the time. The ironic thing is my husband and I do not drink alcohol. We don't drink. We don't have a drop of alcohol in this house unless you count the vanilla extract that I use in my Christmas cookies, because we just don't drink. I mean, we're just not, it's not religious, it's not moral. We're not drinkers. And anybody who knows us, who have gone out to dinner with us or have had us over for parties and offer us drinks, I drink water. My husband will drink Coke. We don't drink. And so for them to go there and accuse my husband of being a drunk, first of all, it's libel. One of the men who's on my mailing list, when he saw that, he's an attorney, and he said, if we could only find out who he is, I mean, that's libel, to keep calling him and constantly calling him a drunk, constantly on every forum imaginable. And I said, yeah, but we don't have any idea who he is because he's hiding behind a fake screen name, a pseudonym, and that's what they do. It's like they just do that. I mean, it's really sick, and they feel all powerful, acting out when nobody can do anything about it, and it's like Popeye, I write my blog under my own name. I live here in the city of North Miami Beach. Everybody knows who I am. This is quite a small town. We have about 40,000 residents, and everybody pretty much knows everybody. Pretty much everybody knows where we are.
Do you fear for your safety? Do you or your husband fear at all that there might be some sort of reprisal?
I'm not afraid.
Well, I should rephrase that. Not fear, because fear's a bad emotion to have anyway.
Right.
Do you think there will be any sort of reprisal, like other than just catty comments and stupid, stupid blogs and stuff like that?
You know what? I don't think so, but I don't know. But I'm not going to live my life in fear. I'm not going to live as if that I'm afraid to go out into my driveway or drive the streets of North Miami Beach. I'm not going to speed, obviously. I'm not stupid.
Yeah, don't give them any ammo. But no, that's good. You shouldn't live in fear. Well, first of all, they don't have the right to make you live in fear in your own city and around your own house. That is the definition of terrorism. And if that's the case, then there's really a problem. So, I mean, right now, what they're doing, it's harassment and threatening. I mean, and it's not just you, it's a couple residents as well who have stood up and backed the council and said, look, things have to, it sucks, but this is what has to get done. And rather than being adults about it, they're being childish, correct?
Right. But I don't know if your listeners know the story. The background is what they did was they sent me a comment. One of the cops sent me a comment to approve for my blog, which of course I didn't approve. This is what the interview with Channel 7 was about, because they said they gave out 2 addresses of 2 gentlemen that live here in North Miami Beach who are outspoken and community activists like myself. And they gave out this cop, we know it's a cop now, but I didn't know at the time who it was, gave out the address of these 2 gentlemen, and one of them happens to be a German, actually born in Germany, which I didn't know until recently, and called him a Nazi. And the other gentleman is a Muslim, and they made fun of his name. They call him Al Jazeera, and they call him Bin Laden, and it just rolls off this guy's back. I mean, I don't know how this guy doesn't lose it, but he doesn't. He's a really nice guy, a super nice guy. You know who he is.
But and you can see the level. This is the level of the argument. So they have no argument. Looking at it through it logically, there is no argument whatsoever. It's all ad hominem and straw man crap because they can't stand up to you guys. And rather than say, well, blah 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 blah. No, they just go, shut up, terrorist, Bin Laden, blah blah blah. They call you names and everything else. I mean, that's childish and pathetic.
Oh, I know. They call me staph infection. How to me that level of humor might be funny if you're about 12 years old. When you're a kid and you make up
that
funny
shows you
names,
the mentality
of what I'm dealing with. And so it's pretty funny. But you know what's really ironic? I got to tell you this, Popeye. None of them have the balls, and I'm talking about the balls, all right? I talk like a sailor. None of them have the balls to come up to me or to come up to Mr. Muslim or Mr. German or any of the other residents and say, look, let's talk about this. Let's discuss this. I'm upset with you because you said this. No, what they do is they go behind fake names on the Miami Herald, on my website, on that Leo Affairs, and they make fun of us like little babies, like little pussies, okay? And that's laughable. It's laughable, but at the same time, it's a matter of concern because they have guns and badges, okay? We're not talking about children here. We're talking about grown men and women, but I have a feeling it's mostly the men. And I don't mean to be sexist, but I just haven't had any problems with the female cops. I don't know why, but they're grown adults. Let's put it that way, and they are acting like children. They're like children. They go and they make fun of my hair. Okay, they're making fun of my hair. They're making fun of my clothes,
and they think it's funny.
And they think it's funny.
But if you look at it you realize, I mean, it's pathetic. Like,
it's pathetic.
Stephanie's not upset about it. She's not like, I asked her, I said, does it offend you? And she laughed and she was like, no, it's rather pathetic because it shows you the mentality and the fact that, again, there is no, real argument there. It's just ad hominem attacks.
So now they're sitting here telling me my hair looks like straw and how do you go out there? And then they say, you better, instead of spending your time blogging, you should make yourself more attractive. Otherwise, you're going to have to buy your husband more Viagra and more alcohol. I'm like, what? Like, how pathetic is that? I mean, it's like, where do they come up with this stuff? And I'm laughing. I'm saying, are they serious? I mean, are these grown-ups? Are these adults saying such stupid stuff? And it freaks me out, Popeye? These are cops. They have badges. They have guns. Doesn't that make you a little concerned? The mentality.
Well, see, it concerns me because I used to be, involved in this. I used to, I was in the military, and I saw guys that had the same exact attitude, and they didn't care about being idiots and stuff. And it's very disturbing because somebody with that mentality, they're not even going to think twice. They shot the mentally challenged kid. How do you know that they're not going to do that to you? That's the problem.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like, but I pointed out in my blog, I'm like, you want people who are carrying guns, legally, obviously, and with badges, because, with the gun comes a badge, okay? And that means they have certain rights. And then, unfortunately, they have too many rights in today's society, but that's another topic. But you want them to be responsible with their firearms, and you want them to be respectable and professional. That's another thing. You want them to be professional. How much can you respect and how professional do you think a person is who does these things? I mean, who writes these things?
Well, they're not being professional, and they're attacking their bosses because essentially you're the boss.
Exactly.
What else? What other kind of attacks have you been receiving from the police department?
Well, that's basically it. It's all verbal. It's all anonymous. It's all behind, their.
And you had a run-in with one cop, right? He got in your face or something and growled at you.
Right. That was in my column. If you want to go back to my website, called "The Calico Cops from Hell," and I don't know if you saw the first one where that was called "Calico Cops." It's become kind of a running joke between me and my regular readers. I wrote about this. I was in the shower one night. My shower faces the back. My bathroom faces the backyard. Again, where Myron, the peeping Tom Mayer, could have taken a picture. But the windows are high. They're not low. But it's dark out there, and I'm in the shower. And this is after I've had several run-ins with these cops. Verbal run-ins and the meetings where they're giving everybody the evil eye. And so I'm in the shower, and I see out of the corner of my eye, I see a shadow, but a white shadow, because it's dark outside. And I see like a white shadow go by, and I see it go by, and I said, okay, I'm imagining things, because I'm a little jumpy, because of all the stuff going on. So a few minutes later, I see it again. So I call my husband. I call him from the shower, and he comes. I go, I think someone's in the backyard, So he goes, he goes out there with his flashlight, and he's looking, and he comes back in. I swear, I'm thinking it's one of the cops. I mean, this is like my first experience with fighting with cops, with being on the wrong end of the law, so to speak, on the wrong side of the law. And he comes in, and he's cracking up. It's a calico cat, and it's white. It's mostly white, but it's a little calico cat that comes around, and he feeds her a lot. We take care of cats. She's cat number 11, by the way. And so he comes in, and he's laughing, and it was a cat, and she was walking across. There's apparently a little ledge under the bathroom. There's a shower window, and so she's walking back and forth across, and that was what the shadow was. And so the next day, it was so funny, and I made it even funnier than it really was, because it was kind of funny. Here I am in the shower thinking there's cops back there stalking me, and that's my imagination going wild. So I wrote a story the next day called Calico Cops, and I explained it, and it was a pretty funny column. But anyways, so that's become like a running joke between me and my readers. Some of them, watch out for calico cats, calico cops rather. We call them calico cops. Well, one night, then the cops, what happened was the cops were going out into the neighborhood, drumming up support from the people to come to City Hall to speak on behalf of the cops, to try to forestall or not have to cut their budget. So this one cop, who's a sergeant, and I'm not going to give his name on the air, but you can read my article if you want to, and his name is right there. I wrote about him, and I said that he's a self-appointed spokesperson, and this is a cop that has been known to be kind of a rogue cop, if you will. He's very intense. That's the word that his colleagues describe him as. Very intense. He's like a 24-hour-a-day cop. He never comes up for air, and he's always got his little guns and his toys, and he's a SWAT member, and he's real intense. He's like, I don't even think the guy knows how to laugh. Okay, and anyway, so I had written in one of my columns, because he gets up before city council at a meeting and he starts telling the council how to balance their budget, and so I made a kind of snide remark. So-and-so, who's now a financial expert, and he's a self-appointed spokesperson for the department because he was on the news. And I kind of made a little crack about him. But he's acting like an idiot, I mean, you put yourself out there, you act like an idiot, or you make a fool of yourself, or you do whatever it is you do. Be prepared for somebody to say something. You don't live in a vacuum, especially a blogger like me, because I am irreverent. Nobody's safe, okay? And so he comes up to me. There was another budget meeting. I'm sitting in the back of the room, the very back row. I have my little iPhone, and I was kind of taking notes of the meeting, but it was really, really boring. And the cops kept coming up there one after the other saying the same thing. Don't cut our budget. You're going to have more crime. The whole thing, all the talking points that I call Alinsky's rules for radicals. You're a little familiar with that, and all the union talking points. And so I'm sitting there just taking notes, and finally I just checked my phone. I'm looking at emails, and I start writing an email, responding to an email on my phone to one of my girlfriends. He comes up behind me, and I'm minding my own business. He comes up behind me, and he goes, "You write that blog." Like real, like snide and nasty, and, like real, like, tough guy-ish, So I turned around to see who it was, and after he said it, he started walking away, he was real praise behind my back. So anyways, I turned around, I see it's him, and I went up to him. I walked up to him, and I wanted to know what he meant, and I wasn't belligerent. I just approached him, what do you mean? Or let's talk about it. He, all of a sudden, I have to tell you, he looked at me with Mad Max face. That those Mel Gibson eyes, you know what I'm talking about? You get away from me. I'm not talking to you. Just like that. And I went, whoa, dude, even if you're mad at me, this is a public place. Even if you don't like that I wrote about you, don't you have to behave, to myself? Like, there's something seriously wrong with this guy. So I back up. I hold my hands up like, okay, I'm not going to invade your space. I'm walking away. I turn around and I said, all right, fine with me. I turned around, and as I walked away, I whispered, I muttered under my breath, but I'm sure he heard me. It was like a stage whisper. I said, boy, you really need help, but to myself. And I go and I sit back down. I pick up my little cell phone. I finish typing my little email, and all of a sudden, he walks by me again. And he whispers again in my ear, not in my ear, not close enough, but, like sort of behind me and has to bend down. He goes, I'll give you something to write in that blog. And I looked up and I said, how can you give me anything to write when you just said you're not talking to me? Like, make up your mind. Either you're talking to me or not talking to me. And he kept on walking away, because I called him on it. First he tells me, I'm not talking to you, get away. And then he's going to tell me he's going to give me something to write in his blog. So I called him on his shit. I said, well, if you're going to give me something to write in my blog, you're going to have to talk to me, I guess, right? I mean, does that make sense to you?
That's a threat. I would consider that a threat, by the way.
I did. I put in a complaint as usual because I'm a complainer. I'm a Jewish vet.
But no, you have to do that because if you don't build a paper trail, then you have nothing to back you up if something happens.
Absolutely. I put in a formal complaint to the chief with a copy to Internal Affairs, with a copy to the city manager, with a copy to the mayor. I mean, it's like I have them on my, my mailing list. It's like my regular list. And I said, this was conduct unbecoming a police officer. He did this. I wrote it in my blog. I said, read my blog for all the details. They did. Now, what they called me. They took me seriously. Internal Affairs called me. They're trying to tell me that he has First Amendment rights, which he does. I would never trample on anybody's First Amendment rights. You know that. And what he said, according to them, is right because he wasn't on duty. This is what he said. He wasn't on duty. He was wearing his union T-shirt. He was wearing his gun, but he wasn't on duty. Okay? And I said, really? So I got a copy of their police procedural and manual, whatever it's called. And I contend because it says a cop is always on call, they're allowed to carry their gun 24 hours a day, and because a cop is always on call, they're expected to respond if needed, no matter where they are. I guess in the city. I don't know if it's only in the jurisdiction or if it's anywhere in the country or the state. I don't know. But they have to respond. It's like their duty to respond when needed. So I went back to the chief and I had a meeting with him and I said, this means if they're always on call, that means they're always on duty. So you can't give me that he wasn't on duty. And if he's on duty and he's violated, now if he were officially on duty, his behavior would have violated their code of behavior according to the manual. But they're trying to tell me he wasn't on duty. And where am I going to go with this? It's like, they're going to protect him. I get it. So this guy will not approach me anymore. And he was told not to approach me, and he hasn't. But beyond that, if their own internal affairs department says that he did nothing inappropriate, they did agree that it was inappropriate. It was rude. He shouldn't have done that, but he didn't do anything that warranted discipline, official discipline. You see what I'm saying? Because he wasn't officially on duty.
You can look. I'm not being a dick when I say this, but nowadays you can be a cop, shoot somebody for no reason at all. The guy could be unarmed, and you'd be lucky if the guy gets disciplined for it because it's the blue wall of silence, and I have an issue with that because if you're bad, you need to be purged so that the whole because they tarnish the entire one bad cop makes all cops look bad. It doesn't matter if every cop is good except one and there's only one bad cop. Their actions, this is what we were taught when I was in the military. If you act like an ass in your uniform, they're not judging you. They're judging the entire service. The branch that you're in. So they're going to say, the military is a bunch of idiots. In this case, it's, the cops are a bunch of idiots. Even if they're out of uniform, if you're wearing a union shirt and a gun on your hip, that gun is only there for intimidation factor because he could have left his gun in his car, okay, and come into the meeting without his gun like everybody else has to, okay? Everybody that has concealed weapons permits can't bring their guns in there. They all have to leave their stuff in.
Cops are allowed to. By law, they're allowed to. That doesn't make it, right, but they're allowed to by law. And, but the thing is,
in a civil meeting like that, why do you need to bring a firearm into the meeting? It's an intimidation thing. There's no need. The cop is not going to need. If there was a problem where somebody swung or got into a fight, and the police would be justified in arresting them, there's more than there's 20 or 30 cops in the room or more. Then you don't need to have your gun because there's enough manpower there to handle it without deadly force. So then you don't need the weapons to begin with. Why can't they just come to the table and be reasonable? They're acting like
they're not talking by reasonable people.
No, they're acting like bullies, and you can't. There's only a certain way to deal with a bully.
Exactly.
You have to stand up to a bully. You don't stand up to the bully. The bully's going to keep picking on you. This week it'll be this. The next week it'll be something else. They have to work with us. Everybody has to work together. Well,
they're not team players. They're team players with themselves, because of the brotherhood, but they're not team players with the community. They're not, they'll sit there and say, oh, community policing, community. You know what? They don't give a shit about this community. They want their money, and they want to go home to their wonderful communities where there's no drive-bys, and where there's no scumbags. Because, we're just a dirt-filled scumbag.
Well, but then I challenge them, then they're not doing their jobs. Because if they were really doing their jobs, there wouldn't be all these dirtbags, scumbags.
You know that.
They would, they would have things, and I don't mean, they would have things locked down and checkpoints and all this other crap. But you would be working with the residents, so you wouldn't feel that they were scum. You would understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
But see, they're not like that. Look, I have friends that are cops, and they take, a lot of them, they live 30 or 40 miles away from where they work, and I tell them, I have an issue with that because where I grew up, more than half the police in the department that took care of the town that I grew up in New Jersey lived there. So they had a personal investment in making the town a better place, and getting along with the residents, as opposed to bullying the residents. And that's what we have now. And it's not right. The cops, we don't need this us versus them mentality. They should work with the public. And I know that's ultimately your goal. Like, you guys don't want to be, you guys want to work with them and,
of course.
weed out the bad apples, and then work out everything. I'm sure you don't want to continue to have fights with them, correct?
Right. No, that's the thing. We always wanted to get along with the police. We've never wanted to be in this position. Once this budgeting started happening, we saw a whole different side to these guys. Now, that's not to say other residents haven't had problems with them. I've heard, not a lot, but a few residents have commented about certain cops that are bullies, like this one particular cop that I know.
I've had it myself. I've witnessed it myself, that they, for no reason, they single people out and they act like tough guys for no reason when there is no reason to act like that.
But I could tell you from personal experience that until now, every encounter that I have ever had with a North Miami Beach police officer has been respectful, professional, courteous, helpful, friendly. I've never had a run-in with a North Miami Beach police officer. I held our department in such great esteem. Popeye, I can't even tell you. It's like I was proud to be from North Miami Beach, not so much for our neighborhoods because, it's kind of crappy here, but our police department is well known. They're well trained. We spend a lot of money on their training. The facility is phenomenal. If you've ever walked through there, I had a tour there a few weeks ago. It's a very professional, organization.
Oh, I know some of the other North Miami Beach cops, and I think they're some of the nicest guys in the world. But those are the guys that are the older generation of cops.
Exactly, they are. The older
they weren't trained that the public is, the enemy, and these guys understand the Constitution. They understand their oath, and I respect them because there are good. I know just as much as there are, idiot cops, there are good cops too. And
I could tell you that the ones that are acting up, I would bet that they are a small minority. And I have said that. I have said that on my blog. And, of course, you have your people here that will say, no, it's not a small minority. Most of them are bad. But I've never had that experience. I've never had a bad experience until now, like I said.
Well, I said to you, that's because you never pissed them off until now.
Oh, right. but still, even now, with them trying to intimidate me, with them trying to push my buttons and, and buttons of other residents, I could tell you, Popeye, because I'm pretty good with writing, and I can tell somebody's writing style. And these comments that are being posted on every forum are really coming from, I would say, anywhere from, if it was more than 5 different people, I would be surprised. It's really a very small minority. Now, I'm not saying that they're all wonderful, because there were more than 5 that were lining up in the back wall of City Hall. Okay, so they all have their issues, but the ones that are coming out and writing these nasty, childish things and, like trying to intimidate us and send us these nasty emails, really, I could tell you, it's about 5 or less.
Yeah, it's not it's not like there's a huge conspiracy of 20 or 30 police officers against you. No, but all it takes, all that takes though is 5 or 6 people acting like jerks, acting like idiots, acting a fool, and it's casting a shadow on the rest of the department. Now, aside from, I'm sure, cops just aren't the same way as they were when I was a kid, and even when I was a firefighter. They've gotten to this point where I have friends that are cops, and they even tell me some of the stuff that they trained for is out of control. I have friends that retired from being police officers because they couldn't stand what was going on anymore. Okay, so it's not like I'm not in the, I was in the military. I was a firefighter. I've always been around. I've always worked and had friends that were police officers. I've always been around it. I respect the old school guys, the guys that are detectives, and they solve crimes. Look, police, I have to tell you something. When the thing that pissed me off, one of the things that really irritated me was when they went around telling the public, you're going to be less safe if we're not here. First of all, if the crime rate is as bad as it is now, okay, you're not doing your job to begin with, so you should all be fired, okay, and then replaced. If that's the card they want to play, then all the ones that are crying and whining that they should all be fired, because we need cops that are going to do their job, because the crime rate is horrible. Okay, if that's the case you want to argue. Now, removing 17 cops is not going to make the crime rate go up. The robbery thing, you're going to have it. There's 40, 50,000 people. There's in North Miami Beach, yes, there is a large amount of lower income people. But you know what? Rather than attack them like animals, why not try to make it a more reasonable place and work with them? Maybe help them get out of that mindset, and maybe that'll help you get out of your combative mindset, because it's not us versus them. We're all in it together. But the problem is, it's supposed to be, but that's what it feels like. The way it is right now, that's the way it's set up. It's like a game. It's us versus them, and they buy into they meaning the police that get combative or make little catty comments and stuff. Right. They buy into that mentality. And look, that's unprofessional at a very base level. Even if you want to put everything else aside, that's very unprofessional. You're supposed to be a police officer. You're supposed to hold yourself above what you consider, you consider people dogs and vermin and all that. Well, how are you going to consider somebody vermin and lower than you? And then when you try to have an argument with them, the only thing you argue with them is ad hominem attacks and straw man stuff. And I can tell you that I guarantee you, if some of the cops hear this broadcast, they probably won't understand the term ad hominem or straw man argument. They won't get it. Okay, and that's sad. They're not even understanding what they're doing. They're just attacking you because their argument is null and void. Look, it sucks that the budget has to get cut. Like I said, it sucks that But what about firemen losing their jobs? What about EMS? What about people in the private sector? Exactly. What about everybody else being out of work? If you want to be mad at people losing jobs, see, if the cops are going to be mad at people, they shouldn't be mad at their local government. They should be mad at the federal government and all these bankers and people like the Federal Reserve for getting us into this mess to begin with. Their pensions and their jobs wouldn't be disappearing if these guys didn't dick around with money, with Ponzi schemes and everything else. And you know what else? You guys want to find out money, you should look up the comprehensive annual financial report, okay? And you should check out, because the water department has its own budget, you should check out the water department, because that's how a lot of these cities, they take this money and they go and invest stuff, like in, airline companies or whatever, and they make a killing. The new city manager, and this is what they're attacking him, of course, and saying he doesn't know what he's doing, but the new mayor
and the new city manager have literally dug through the budget and dug through they went through line, but why do you think they needed 9 budget workshops? I mean, they went through, this is the first time I spoke with Barbara Kramer, as you know, who went through 2 budget processes already before this one, and she voted no on the last budget because she knew something was wrong. But, they're not accountants. They're not financial experts. They're ordinary people, Barbara and Beth, and, even career politicians are not financial experts, okay, unless they happen to have a degree in that. And they could see the difference from this year to last year, because last year, the previous city manager, Kelvin Baker, who was fired for his NAACP issue, he bloated the budget. He stole from not stole, okay, he didn't steal it and put it in his pocket, but he pilfered the water department reserves and the general reserves to bloat his budget. And these council people, 3 of them or whatever, they voted for it based on the fact that they thought he knew what he was doing. And last year, suspicions arose, and that's why Barbara voted against it, but she didn't know quite what was wrong. But this year, the process to go through the budget was excruciating, not only for the city manager, but for the mayor and all 6 of the rest of the council people and all the residents, myself included, that followed and dug through it with them. And I'm telling you, this has never been done in the city of North Miami Beach, to my knowledge, where they just tore the budget apart, picked it apart, turned up every stone and looked under every rock, and they found they're still digging. I have to tell you, Popeye, they're still digging. They were left with a mess. I know Obama likes to blame George Bush for the mess that he left behind, but this is a real mess. Okay,
well, it goes back farther than Bush. They always blame. The guy that comes in, whoever gets in after Obama, will blame Obama, and then whoever gets in after him will blame him. It's a game. That's why.
I was just using that as an example.
Well, no, but it's a good example because they always blame the previous. But in this case, it is. I mean, in North Miami Beach's case, it really is the previous administration.
No, it is the previous administration.
But and it's not just Myron. It goes back. I would say this corruption probably goes back 20 years. You guys just didn't realize what was going on at the time.
Exactly, and the thing is, George Vallejo, the new mayor, has vowed, and I know him personally, and I personally vouch for him. And by the way, this is really funny. They make jokes that they infer me and George are like having an affair, okay? I mean, because this is their mentality, and they say, you're always sticking up for George. And one of them said, you're like the mayor's propaganda machine, and why can't you be more fair and balanced? This is what they wrote. And I said, look, I don't have to be fair and balanced. I'm a blogger, not a reporter. This is my opinion. And so far, I believe in George Vallejo. I was there when he decided to become the mayor. I've known him before that. I campaigned for him. I vouched for him. I supported him. I endorsed him. And he's doing everything right in my book. I have nothing to complain about, And so because I appreciate the fact that we finally have a real good mayor here, they make snide remarks like, go kiss George. Excuse me, George is happily married. I'm married. And it's like, where is this coming from? It's
high school mentality.
It's junior high school.
You have to take it where it's coming from. And I personally wouldn't feel safe with that kind of person as a police officer, because obviously you don't have the mental capacity to be running around with a badge and a gun solving crimes.
Exactly. That's what makes it scarier, the way they're acting like children, but they have guns and badges. I mean, that is really, really scary.
Well, would you welcome them, like, if they said, look, we were wrong, we apologize, is there, we got out of hand, would you accept, some sort of apology in any way, or is it beyond that?
You know what? No, I don't think it's beyond that, because as you know, I'm a firm believer in forgiveness. You know that. I'm a firm believer in admitting when you make a mistake. And I can tell if somebody's honest or not. I just have one of those, I don't know what you call it, women's intuition. I don't know what it is, but I can read a person. I'm really good at that. I've been around this planet for, over half a century. So by now I better know how to deal with people. And I can tell you still, and even with all this crap that we're going through, there are men and women on our police department that are absolutely fine individuals. And they're wonderful, they're kind, they are there for the right reasons. They are. And I'm trying not to let the few bad apples spoil the bunch. It's very hard because it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And they're the ones who are making the noise. They're the ones who are getting the attention, and it's all negative attention. And
I have a problem with is the fact that the other officers who know what's up and the older guys, they should be putting these younger, little immature punks into place. They should be like, look, you guys are acting like a little punk. Knock it off. Come on, you're a police officer. You need to hold yourself to a higher standard. See,
exactly.
You're wearing a uniform and a badge. You have to hold yourself to a higher standard. If you would, you can't turn around and say, I'm better than people because I'm a cop, and then at the same token act like a jerk off. If you're gonna walk around with that attitude, then you need to hold yourself to a higher standard, so that then maybe you do have some foundation if you're polite, you're professional, and then the person responding to you is an ass. Like if they were responsible and not childish and didn't post these little retarded comments on some law enforcement,
It's kind of funny though. I mean,
how pathetic is that there's actually stupid some law enforcement forum where these immature cops post this stuff. How come there's not mature cops standing up and saying, yo, enough is enough? Because they're out there. They do exist.
Oh, I know. And you know what? Some of them have said to me, I've told them not to, but you know what? They go on these forums. They go on anonymously. So for, say, the chief or a captain or somebody to stand up before the crew and say, stop doing this. It's unprofessional. It's disrespectful, whatever. And tells them not to do it, because they've told me, they've said to these guys not to do it, but these are children. We're talking about men that have not grown up emotionally. They may have even a high IQ, but they have a very low EQ, if you know what that is, emotional quotient. Nobody can physically stop these guys from going onto that website. And the thing is, with the Leo Affairs website, this is not a local website, Popeye. This is a national website, and they have forums from police departments all over the country. The Leo Affairs company that runs this website is in Sarasota, Florida, and they're not affiliated with any police department. I mean, our police department doesn't have control over the Leo Affairs website. They have absolutely no control whatsoever.
But there's got to be some sort of moderator on there where they say it's unprofessional, right?
No,
or is the whole website like that?
Absolutely. There is a moderator. I was told by the chief that I could go there as a guest without having to put my name if I didn't want to, and flag comments that are inappropriate, and the moderator will review it and take appropriate action as removing the post. What it was explained to me is there's only so many moderators, and there's literally tens of thousands of comments on threads. It's not as if these moderators are going through these posts. They can only remove something if somebody complains.
Oh no, I know how it works, but that's cool that you can at least email them and then they'll check it out.
Exactly. No, if I were inclined, I would go and I would flag comments and ask the moderator to remove them.
FYI to the cops that obviously don't realize anything, that can be traced.
It
to your IP
except
address
for one
of
thing.
where the comment was left from, just so you know.
Well, it can be if the owner of the website allows it. And what I was told is whoever owns this website, Leo Affairs, they were taken to court to release an IP address, and they actually won. They won under some privacy thing, okay? So, and I'm not even going to go there. What I'm trying to tell you is I could, if I wanted to, go on their Leo Affairs website, flag a comment that I find offensive, and the moderator will most likely remove it.
Well, you don't need the owner of the website either.
Why would I do that?
You don't need the owner of the website either. If you know somebody that's an IT person,
I might, but you know what?
I'm just saying it's possible that it could be traced. So there is no. Maybe officially you couldn't do it, but there is a way for them to be found out. So, and rather than be a child or a baby about it, they should just maybe sit down like adults and say, look, we were wrong. Let's sit down. This is what you said, something that pissed me off. This is why I reacted. And you could say, okay, you know what? maybe you took
I
it
would
the
do
wrong
that.
way or whatever. That's,
yeah. Well, that's why when I told you about that one officer who wrote me that nasty post, and I published it and I made my little humorous comments about it, and this guy, whoever he is, I don't even know who he is, but I call him Officer Yeah Right because that's his screen name. He's become very respectful and very funny. He has a sense of humor, and he says, I may not agree with everything you say, but you do your research. You say what you say. I may not agree with your opinions, but you know what you're talking about. And he's become. We have some banter, a little bit of banter, not a lot. But I mean, I'm a firm believer that if a person is a nice person to begin with, and maybe they're angry, maybe they're upset, and I understand they're upset. They're losing 17 of their brothers and sisters, and yeah, they're upset. They have a right to be upset. They don't have a right to act out, and that's the thing. I've always had that I've told my children, I've raised my kids that way. You have a right to your feelings, but you don't have a right to inflict your feelings on anybody else. Okay? You have to own your feelings, but you have to learn how to control them, because we don't want to hear it. And that's
why
my
be an ass about it? Why not come to you and say, hey, look, you might have said something in your blog that was snide, or you said something that I took offense to. Okay,
right.
Well,
I probably did.
No, but you know what? If they came to you and said, hey, look, I took offense to something you said, you could be like, oh, well, I didn't mean it to come out that way, or I apologize.
I've done that. I've absolutely done that.
But I know that. That's why I'm saying it's stupid for them to come at you the way. There's no need to be combative, and rather than be asses about it, they should come to you like adults. But what happens is that actually shows their mindset and how they think.
Right.
Which again goes back to the fact that they want people like that with guns to be running around and with that kind of power.
Problem. That's the problem.
And they were probably guys that were going to get laid off. They were probably amongst the 17 that got canned.
Some of them were, I believe, but I don't know because they don't use their real names. And frankly, I don't even know the names of the 17 cops that were laid off. I don't know who they are. I have no idea. I know that the original list called for, I believe it was either 24 or 26. I can't remember the exact number. And there were two that I knew. One I know personally, who was in the top 26. I think she was number 19 or 20. I don't remember. And then there was another one that was also in the original 24 or 26. But they're both of their jobs are safe because then the list was cut down to 17. But those were the only two that I know. And one of them I happen to know because my son and her sister grew up together. They were best friends, and they're still best friends. So I know the family. And I was upset that she was going to be laid off because I know her. I like her. She's a wonderful person, and she's an excellent cop, and she's a very nice person, very nice. And I wasn't happy that she was going to be laid off. In fact, I even mentioned it in the blog. I said, I wish that if it weren't for the union rules, which are last in, first out, that she would not be gone. Because if it was based on merit, she's an excellent cop. She would have had her job. Now, she still does because, the list got smaller. But my point is the union is the one who caused this problem. And that's a whole other story, which I'm not even going to have time to go into tonight. But my battle really, Popeye, is not with the cops per se, except for those handful of baby cops. My battle has been with the union. And that is a whole different
But see, the thing is those cops are being... They're either being idiots themselves, or they're being, used, by the union.
Oh, they're being used by pawns. They are being used as pawns.
And they're being pumped up with and getting all worked up and everything else.
Right. Absolutely. And let me tell you something. The union, if the union wanted to keep all 17 cops, I guarantee you all 17 cops would be there. The union thinks nothing of throwing their members under the bus to make a point. Okay.
Of course, they could have looked. They could have made concessions. Look, what they should have done was they should have said, "Look, this is what we'll do. We don't need this kind of crap. This kind of stuff. We can save. We can possibly save. 3 or 4 more people's jobs. These guys should have gotten together." Okay, and sat down and figured it out rather than, the union will work it out. Dude, I've been screwed by the union. I speak as a former union member. I got screwed over.
Exactly. No, I'm telling you, they let the union do the negotiations because that's the way it is. They have to. They don't have a choice because they chose to be
Look what the
union.
auto workers union did when the government bought out GM.
They're going under the United Auto Workers. I just posted an article today, not on my blog, on Facebook. They're now in deep trouble. UAW, the nation's richest union, is now in the hole because of budget mismanagement. I am very anti-union, very, very, very anti-union, and I mean that goes without saying. I will never back down on that, and I don't care who it is. But there's no unions are so irrelevant today, because there's no reason for a public union to begin with, as you know that. They're negotiating with their employers. They're not. There's no negotiating.
Well, they're corrupt to the core. There's no good
core.
unions. I mean, every union is infiltrated with some sort of corruption.
Right.
And they always look. The people that run the unions are human, and they won't think twice about climbing. As I've said, they'd climb over their dying mother to F their sister.
Exactly.
So they'll just throw their own people under the bus. They don't care. They don't care.
And you know what the funny thing is? My husband, who actually was in the union, he was a firefighter, and he fought his own union. He just always tried to get the truth. And he told me flat out, he goes, the union stuck its foot in its collective mouth because they laid their guns, not guns, real guns. They laid everything out on the table. They took a stand, is what they did. They took a stand, and once they took a stand, they could not back down, even if they wanted to, no matter how wrong they were proven. And I was going to write a column tonight, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get to it tonight because it's getting late. But the union president, Mike Pons, absolutely lied to our local NBC affiliate in an article that was just posted earlier today. And the city manager, Mr. Bonner, had to go and rebut every one of Pons's lies in a formal letter to NBC6, which I have a copy of. And so my next blog that I haven't written because I've been on the phone with you, which is very cool though, is the contrast between the union president's lies and the truth. And that's what I'm about, Popeye. I'm all about the truth. Whether it's ugly, whether it's pretty, I don't care. I want the truth, the unadulterated truth. And, you're dealing with mainstream media. I get that. But you're also dealing with unions. And the combination between the two, you're never going to get the truth. So you need people like me. You need people like you.
Well, didn't they call you guys teabaggers too or something?
Yeah,
the police officers?
Isn't that lovely? Oh, and you should have seen the cartoon that they put on their Leo affairs. It was like pornographic, but it's a cartoon about me and the mayor and him teabag. It wasn't me and him, obviously. It was a cartoon, but a man teabagging a woman's face. And he said, here's Mr. Mayor Pendejo, they call him, which is like, a play on his name, which means like liar in Spanish. And his teabagger, I don't know, girlfriend, because, they're always saying, oh, the mayor and his girlfriend. And it's funny because there's another councilwoman on the council named Beth Spiegel who has been sticking up for fiscal, conservative, to be fiscally conservative. And she's a Democrat too, by the way. So it goes to show you that it's not about party; it's about mentality. And so when I wrote in my blog last night about what a wonderful job, Councilwoman Spiegel is doing, and I kind of, went on about her because she did a great job last night. And then I put in there, I better be careful because the idiot brigade on Leo affairs will accuse me of cheating on George with you. Because they're always like making these little snide remarks, like trying to accuse me and George of, having whatever they think we're doing. And it's like, because then I'll just give them something else to talk about because they're such children. So now the next thing you know, they're going to talk that they're going to say I'm a lesbian with Councilwoman Beth Spiegel, which, by the way, isn't true. But Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not true. We're both married.
Yeah, but to see why does it need to go, why do they need
I don't know
to
why they
even
need
go
to do
there?
that.
Why can't they
Why
just
do they need to do that?
why
You know
it's
what?
been they're being children about this. They keep
Of course.
antagonizing you and
Of
throwing
course.
attacks out there. So are they being told by the union to continue to do this? Maybe attack
Who
any
knows?
detractors?
You know what? Knowing Mike Pons, who verbally accosted Mayor Vallejo in the hallway at a council meeting in the presence of our local channel, ABC affiliate, Channel 10, for the cameras, grandstanded, and you can see that video on my blog also. Who knows what he's telling them? If they're following his lead, he's going to lead them over a cliff. But if they're following his lead, have at it. And that's pretty much what the battle boils down to. And I look at it as the truth versus the lies. I look at it as good versus evil, and I'm not talking about in a religious way. You know, I'm not saying devil, you know, Satan. I'm just saying doing the right thing versus doing the wrong thing. I mean, that's it. It's good versus evil, you know. And I'm a firm believer that when you use the truth as a weapon, you can't go wrong. The truth will set you free.
Well, it's like my mother used to say to me, it's not hard to remember the truth because the truth is what really happened. It's hard to remember lies because 5 or 6 years down the road, you don't remember exactly what your story was, but the people you told the story to are going to think it's truth, so it's locked into that easily retracted memory file, whereas, you know, to them, that experience with you happened, so they remember it, but you having that actual experience itself didn't happen, so you don't remember the details of it, and that's why basically she used to say it's easier to remember the truth than it is to remember a lie.
Absolutely,
So,
and especially when you get like me up in age and I'm starting to have memory issues. I better tell the truth because I'll never remember a lie. In fact, I have a hard time remembering the truth. But that's a joke. You know, I always joke around I have early Alzheimer's. But the truth of the matter is I have so many things on my mind. I have so many things that I'm dying to put out on a blog. I have so many things that I want to tell the world about what I believe is the truth. And I think you and I are on the same page about many of these things. You know, it's like it jumbles together. And I sit here and I get antsy and I want to put it on virtual paper, which is actually a keyboard. You know, it's overwhelming sometimes. It's overwhelming. But the way I see it is, you know, our country's going to hell right now. It is. And I see light at the end of the tunnel because I see more and more people stepping up to the plate and either running for office because they can't take it anymore, like George did, and the, you know, other council people, Barbara and Beth and Marlene. And I see that, and I say, you know what, there's hope, because as long as there is the truth, and as long as there are Americans who are willing to stand up to the truth, for the truth, and fight for the truth, and even die for the truth, and I believe there's plenty of us. I do. I see hope as long as we're still here and as long as we're still breathing. We have the responsibility to make sure that America continues, you know, but it goes on the right path. You see what I'm saying? Not continues business as usual. You know, we have to right this country somehow. And that's how I feel, you know. And I love America. I'm very patriotic. And I love all that's good and true and right about America. But I see its flaws. I'm not blinded, you know. But just like when you raise children, you love your children despite their flaws. And it's the same thing. You see what I'm saying? And you try to raise your children to do the right things. Well, by the same token, you turn around and you want your country to do the right things. And you want good things to happen for your country like you do with your children. It's the same thing. So, and as long as I'm breathing and as long as I have energy and you know, some pep in my step, I'm going to keep going. And I'm certainly not going to let a few rogue cops or a stupid-ass union president of a local police department back me down, you know.
Good. You shouldn't be intimidated. And they shouldn't be intimidating you. That's abuse of their authority, and they should actually be punished for it. And I'm not being a dick when I say that. I'm being honest. You know, if if we tried pulling that in some way, if I held it over someone's head and I threatened somebody with something and made them do something, to make them back down or whatever, that would be considered blackmail. Or that could be considered terroristic threats, extortion. Yeah, however I was doing it. So just because you and I can be prosecuted for that, then they should be held to the same, the same standard. Okay, they're not exempt from that. They can't act above, and they should actually be held to a higher standard because, again, they have a uniform and a badge. You represent an idea. Okay,
exactly.
You need to act more mature, and you need to act more in line. You spend all those hours of training. You're doing a disservice and a dishonor to everybody that wears the uniform because of your actions. Because you're making everybody look like jerk-offs because of your actions. Because again, like you said, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the grease. So all the good stuff, if they do good stuff, a lot of that stuff doesn't get remembered or noticed because they could do 10 good things and 4 bad things, and those 4 bad things overshadow all the good they did.
Exactly. Oh, that's exactly right. And I do hold men and women in uniform, both local police, all the way up to the military, to the Secret Service. Well, they don't wear uniforms, but you know what I'm saying? Somebody who does service for a country or service, to their fellow man in a professional capacity, in an official capacity, I should say, you do have to hold them to a higher standard. And one last thing I would like to say. You mentioned something, I don't remember if it was our earlier conversation or here during the interview, how when you were a kid, you wanted to be a cop at one time. These police officers have to realize, whether they like it or not, they are role models for the next generation. Okay? They are supposed to be role models. Athletes are supposed to be role models, and apparently you see most of them, or not most, I shouldn't say that, but quite a few of them fall short. But when you're looking at a police officer or a fireman or a naval officer or, a Marine or, Air Force, what have you, you're supposed to show the future generations, the children, that this is the ideal for which you should aspire. I want to be somebody in your eyes. I look at my children when I was growing up, and I had a kind of an unconventional childhood, and my kids had an unconventional childhood too, because I'm kind of a loose cannon. But I always instilled in them the ideal that you need to be a respectful person. I respected my children's rights. I didn't infringe on their privacy. I didn't spy on my children, but I trusted that they were going to do the right thing. And when I gave them that trust, they showed that they were capable of earning it. But these public officials, they're role models for the future generations. And if they're acting like this on a website, or they're acting like this in public, and let me tell you, there were children in those meeting rooms when those cops were doing this intimidation thing. Some people that come to council meetings do bring their children, mostly teenagers. What are they telling the teenagers? These are impressionable young men.
Well, personally, I think all those cops should be, any of them that tried to intimidate people by wearing their guns and grunting and chesting up, they should all be fired. You're not supposed to intimidate. Who the hell are they to intimidate their employers? They work for the citizens of the city. Police, let's not forget who you work for. You don't work for the union, okay? You work for the citizens. Your loyalty is it should be to the citizens, not to some idiot union rep who gets you all pumped up and says, "Oh my God, they're going to take your jobs." You know what? Maybe if you guys got rid of some of your toys, they'd be able to save more officers' jobs, and nobody would have to lose their jobs. But because they refuse to get rid of certain toys that they do not need, there is not a boogeyman in the closet that the police are going to save you from. More cops does not make you safer, okay? You're more likely to get killed by a police officer in the United States than you are by a terrorist. It's just a fact.
Not just North Miami Beach, not just North Miami Beach.
No, it's a statistical fact. It's a statistical fact.
I believe that.
So I mean, we need to stand back and look at things and say maybe we need to change things and revamp things. Yeah, because we're at, why do the cops need to have the mentality? That's where we're going to make this difference. But whether we turn into a complete Nazi Soviet-esque police state or we get our freedoms back, we have to do it on the grassroots level and say to the cops, look, we're not your enemy, okay, but you need to work with us, and if you guys have a bad crowd, like a few bad seeds, 5 or 6 bad seeds, you need to police yourselves and clean that up.
And I've been saying that, but it falls on deaf ears because they have this mentality where they protect their own, and they're going to protect their own.
You don't need to sell them out. They just need to look. If you want to protect your own, that's fine. You want to keep it in house, that's fine. But then take care of business. Do something about it.
Right. Don't let it out of the house. Right.
Do nothing about it. Do something about it.
Right.
And you don't have to fire the guy, but maybe suspend him for a day or two if that's what you got to do. And if you don't have to be that drastic, then maybe give him a write-up or whatever the hell it takes. And if that starts to change the process. And if that doesn't work and it continues, then you continue the next steps. That's the way they do it anywhere else.
You can't get away with this crap in high school. Okay, I mean, somebody said to me, if any of the kids in high school posted some of that stuff, say on Facebook, for example, they would have been suspended or expelled from school.
And they probably would have had the police called on them.
Or they would have had to call the police on them. But you know what I'm saying? Some of that stuff is very incendiary.
In the one case, they released the addresses of some residents and said, I'm paraphrasing here, go get them. It only takes
like one bullet.
That's a threat.
That is a threat. I thought it was a threat.
So
but,
how is that not a form of terrorism? That's a government official.
You know what? It's still being investigated, and I know that they turned it over to the state attorney. So I can't comment because
No,
it's
I
scary.
what you mean, but that's scary because that's someone with a government official of sorts making a threat to you.
Same. Yeah. Well, he wasn't threatening me, and I need to clear that up because a lot of people, when they read the story, for some reason, they thought that they published my address and that they threatened me. No, I was not the target of that. It was two gentlemen who are also, citizen activists. But you got to understand, Popeye, this was a small town. People like me. People like those two gentlemen who spoke up and quite a few other residents who live here that are politically active. Everybody knows who we are. Everybody knows where we live. We're not hiding. We don't hide. Everybody knows where we are. My address is listed. So publishing their addresses wasn't so much so that the good, upstanding citizens of North Miami Beach would go shoot them. He said in that post, in that email, criminals, here it is. So it's like, here, criminals, here's your targets. How is that not a threat?
Well, that is a threat, and
it's a threat.
See, that's where you come to the line of it doesn't matter if they have a badge or not. People have this mythology that police are somehow infallible. If you look, and I challenge you, just type in Google the term police brutality or police abuse.
I have.
And you'll see millions of articles, and it's the same thing. Cops beating the crap out of somebody they shouldn't, killing somebody, extorting them, getting caught doing things, stealing stuff, stealing drugs, dealing drugs, taking drugs, doing drugs. It's like
you have to open the Miami Herald.
Well, exactly. Look, they're not superhuman. They're just like us.
They're just like us.
We're the same
you know what?
thing.
I still hold them to a higher standard.
Oh, no, you wear your uniform, you represent a bigger idea, and you're part of something larger than yourself, and you need to
exactly.
you both as an individual, and you need to stand up and be professional. But see, that should correlate into your personal life too. When you leave the job, you shouldn't stop being professional. You shouldn't, when you're in your uniform, be, a good officer, and then as soon as the bell rings and you're done for the day, you start acting like a jerk off. That's not how you should handle yourself.
That's the thing. That's what I was telling you before. To me, if they're on duty 24 hours, or rather, I should say, if they're on call 24 hours a day, that means they have a certain demeanor that they're supposed to have. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, where do you draw the line? Where do you? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a public official. I'm not a public servant, I should say, either. But I don't go out in public and start talking to people like that. It's just rude. It's rude, you know, and I don't have an agenda. I'm not running for office. I'm not wearing a badge. I'm not wearing a uniform.
Well, I've dealt with it personally myself. They are rude, you know, and there's,
right.
You know, they don't handle things professionally. They handle things like, you know, they handle things like a bunch of goons. And that's not how you're supposed to handle yourself. And
right.
it surprises me because, like I said, after we had our little issue with them, later on, I went and gave one of them a DVD, and he was very receptive. We were talking, and he understood that, like, he was talking about the Gulf oil spill, and I was very impressed with, you know, his view on things. So
right.
it's not like it's not like a lot of people say, well, all of them are dumb. Look, there are cops that are stupid, and they're drones. But what really bothers me is the fact that these guys are intelligent human beings. They're not stupid, so they should know better. They should hold themselves to a higher standard and say, you know what? Even if this citizen's pissing me off, I shouldn't be getting into it with them. I'm a police officer.
Right.
And just leave it at that. Because then, you know what? You might turn around and say, you know what? I was wrong. I apologize. Maybe I got a little out of hand. Even if you didn't,
I've done that. Not
never
with cops,
know.
I'm usually respectful towards
like
them.
my mother used to tell me, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So maybe if they had showed a little professionalism, you would have been like, oh wow, you know what? I understand, and I'm not saying that.
No,
in defense of you.
absolutely.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here.
Right. No, but I would. You know me now. You've seen that, and
the
I would.
goal here isn't to bash the police either. You know, look, when they do something wrong, they have to be called out on it. They call people out in the form of arresting them or giving them tickets or whatever when they do something quote unquote bad. So they work for the citizens. If they're going and they're abusing their power or they're doing something they're not supposed to, they need to be called out. And as adults and men, they should be like, you know what, we were wrong. And we won't do it anymore, and then actually not do it. You know, not just say it and then continue to do it, but actually follow through. And if they did that, they would earn the respect of the people of the city, because the people would say, "Look, these guys are stand-up guys. They're not." But you know what? Maybe they're not the total dicks we thought they were. Maybe we prejudged them, and then maybe everybody could get along the way they should, because ultimately they're supposed to get along with the citizens, and the citizens are supposed to get along with them. But again, it's part of a larger agenda, and this ever encroaching police state. Is there anything else?
You just please read my blog at votersopinion.com if you're interested in the politics of our one-horse town, as I call it. And, you can see what's going on. And I put everything on my blog that is relevant, sometimes not relevant. I try to make it humorous. I inject my personality and, of course, my opinion. And I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things. So, anyways, it's been great talking to you.
Steph, thank you so much for coming on. And, I hope things get better. I hope you guys are, I first of all, maybe some of the ones that got laid off are some of these, idiots, and then that'll solve the problem. If not, hopefully, you guys are going to, it's not even hopefully, you guys are going to have to, if it continues, you guys are eventually going to have to, force them to, make them, on record officially, make them stop, because, no one should have to put up with their local police officers harassing them on the internet. They talk about cyberbullying BS all the time. There you go. You want to have a nanny state? You should make your own nannies not be bullies themselves. Okay.
I didn't even think of that when you said cyberbullying, because that's really what's going on here.
And I guess you could say cyber stalking too, because now they're watching cyber stalking as well. They're following you around and posting stuff and watching videos and stuff and watching your interviews and making comments. That's kind of stalkerish. Well,
but also you also have to understand, I've also put myself out there too. I'm a public figure by default. Actually, I didn't start out.
I know, I'm being sarcastic. Like, if they can't have their cake and eat it too, you can't have this. You want to have a nanny state and charge people with stupid things, and then turn around and go do it yourself. Like, how do you spell the word hypocrite?
Yeah. Well, they call me a hypocrite even if they can't spell it, but because of my husband and his pension, they think I'm being hypocritic by complaining. But whatever. That's like you said. What did you call it? A straw man? or there was another word.
Well, when they attack you, it's ad hominem attacks, and then
Ad hominem, that's it. Yeah, that's the word.
The straw man argument is when they create an argument that's a complete different argument than what the original argument is, and they attack.
Well, they can argue over my hair all they want.
Well, no, that's ad hominem attacks. They that's childish behavior, and that's because they don't have a strong argument. Look, I challenge them to come to the table like adults, apologize for their behavior, and then just move on with it, and that would be the end of it. But if you don't, and you can,
and if I've said anything erroneous, which I hope I didn't, because I'm pretty good with my fact checking. If I said something erroneous, now if I said something snarky and sarcastic, I could apologize. Sometimes I do go over the top. If you've read my blogs, I tend to get carried away, but that's just part of my humor and my sarcasm.
That's being the bigger person. She's saying that if the anonymous posters come forward, then, and if you can show how maybe she might have said something that pissed you off, and you can tell her, maybe you guys can have an adult conversation about it.
We would, if they would come to my face, like a man, and say, hey, listen, you're being nasty, and I'll go, oops, you're right, I am. I've done that.
Okay, but
I am nasty.
Let's put it out there.
Leave my hair alone. I already know my hair is terrible. I mean, leave me alone with my hair. I mean, I'm just going to keep wearing a ponytail because I'm just not a hair person.
That's now it's out there. They should come to you as men, and now the challenge is out there. Now that whatever response you get, you'll be able to. That'll be the end of it. Like that'll end it. But it'll show you where it's ended. They'll either end it with men and try to fix it, or they won't.
I'm willing to laugh over this. Attacking my hair. I mean, seriously. Or telling me I shopped at Walmart. You know what? I shopped at Old Navy. That's where my wardrobe is from. And I'll tell you why. Because I can buy it at oldnavy.com because I don't like to shop. I'm not your typical woman. I don't go to the mall. I don't like to shop.
But that's not even any of their concern, regardless.
No, I know, but that's part of my humor. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't care what I look like. I mean, I do care. I do care a little bit what I look like. I mean, I'm not a cow. But
it's not like you're a witch and you have horns or anything, and they shouldn't be they shouldn't be resorting to that. They should be acting like a bunch of adults rather than.
I mean, I'm a person. I'm a human being.
Yeah, even if you said something that offended them, and that was maybe it was snarky. The point is they should hold themselves to a higher standard, and if they're going to point it out, be professional about it, and then maybe this wouldn't be continuing the way it is.
And if I said something that bothered them and they came to me like a human being and said, that wasn't very nice, I'll look at them and I'll say, you know what? That wasn't very nice. You're right. And I'm sorry. And I will do that. I will be the first to apologize. And if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. And
well, there you go. You're trying to bridge the gap. You're trying to.
That's how I am.
You're pulling the olive branch out there. Now, if they hear the broadcast, maybe they'll respond, appropriately. Hopefully, if they do respond, appropriately.
I'm not expecting it, but I would love to be pleasantly.
I don't expect it either, but I'm just saying, hey, at least you're on record as saying that you're putting the olive branch out there. You're challenging them. You're challenging them to be bigger men and to stand up and act responsibly and professionally. So that's awesome.
Right. Well, that's how I am. It's funny. I'm going to end this on a joke because two of my very close friends, and Barbara Kramer happens to be one of them, we started out being political enemies. And, it was like just because over politics, we happened to be on opposite sides of an issue, a particular issue at one time. And we started out like hating each other, like, cat fights, like girls do. And once we started talking, we realized, hey, we like each other. We're friends, and you see Barbara and I are very close now. And it was funny because my daughter, who's now 19, but this happened, I would say, maybe 5 years ago or maybe even longer, she always jokes, Mom, how come all your friends that you have, you started out as enemies? She said this to me. And I said, I don't know. That is strange. But it's like, even if two people, if I and somebody else start out like having a contentious relationship, the minute one of us backs down, or both of us at the same time, and we realize, hey, wait a minute, we're both on the same side, and we become very good friends because I forgive easily. I really do. And
Well, case in point, an example is you and me. You know,
yeah,
you were snarky about me, and then I didn't come back, but I didn't say
my snarky self.
yeah, but I didn't say, "Oh, you're a bitch" or anything like that. I responded to you like when you and I you responded. You responded to you commented. I responded. You responded to my comment, and then you thought I was going to be an ass in my response, and it turned out I wasn't. I was very professional and nice to you, and I caught you completely off guard.
You did, but you know what? I love when that happens. I love when somebody writes back like I mentioned to you, that cop that wrote me an FU message, and now we're very cordial to each other. We obviously don't talk because I don't even know who he is. It's only on my blog, but when you wrote back, I didn't expect you to be nice to me.
That shows that you were able to bridge a gap with already one of these officers that maybe doesn't agree with you 100%, but you're not asking that they even agree with you at all. Just don't be dicks when they respond to you. Don't try to intimidate you. Don't try to pull this police state crap with you, because you know your freedom, you know your rights, and you're not going to stand it, and that's good. You're standing up for yourself.
I do, and sometimes it gets me in trouble, but I have to.
But you can't live in this like Dukes of Hazzard boss hog atmosphere where they have this corrupt people and these corrupt officers telling you what to do because they're all watch each other's backs. Look, the other cops are just they're in my eyes, the cops that aren't doing it are just as responsible, because they're not. Even if they say, look, you guys shouldn't do it, you should make it a point to say to them, look, knock it off. You guys are getting out of hand. Knock it off. You're making us look bad. See, there's a certain point when they start to make everybody look like dicks, and then that's when everybody needs to stand up and say, look, you're making the rest of us that do our job look like a bunch of asses. Knock it off.
Right. And they're making our city look bad, in the news. My husband is very upset because all their antics and their little, media, things that they go on interviews and what have you. He has gone up to City Hall and said, you're embarrassing our entire city by doing this, and we already, when Myron was there and the former council, we were the laughing stock of Dade County. Now we have, 4 good council people, including the mayor, really good, good people, and we're finally getting on the right track, and we're finally earning the respect of our communities around us, especially in North Miami. Look at North Miami. I mean, at least they've taken a lot of the heat off us, because they're just so totally corrupt over there. And now we have this issue with the cops. I mean, who's going to take this city seriously? Who's going to give us the respect as a community? And that's a big thing.
But see, that goes back to the fact that most of the cops don't live within the city limits, so they don't care how they make the city look, because it doesn't affect them. And they make comments like everybody's an animal and all this other crap. So, I mean, they look at the citizens of North Miami Beach like vermin and animals and beasts. So, I mean, with that kind of mentality, again, do you really want people like that as a police officer?
No, I don't. I want people that take ownership of the city, that feel a sense of responsibility and a sense of pride.
They should live there. It should be a requirement that they live.
I don't know that you can require that by law. I mean, that's like a whole different. That's something out of my realm.
That's what I don't get. They make laws about everything, but something that would make sense, like requiring the police officer to live within a 10-mile radius of the city. That way, if he doesn't live within the city limits, he still feels the effect of what the city's going through, because he sees it, and he'll take pride in it. The point is to make the officer take pride in their city, like it's their own.
But you also know that there's many laws on the books in this country that absolutely make no sense. So.
Oh, I know. Moot point. We could do another 6 hours on that alone. So.
But I really want to thank you for calling me and having me on your show. And I hope your listeners, I keep saying readers because I'm used to writing. I hope your listeners enjoy the show, and I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep. And I'm sorry about the hair.
Don't worry.
I'm really
you're fine.
Sorry about the hair. And next time I will wear. What the cop said? Next time wear a hat. You're right. I have a collection of baseball caps, and I should have worn my hat. Except both my teams are doing so badly this year that I don't want to wear it. The Colts and the Dolphins.
Well, you can tell him you'll wear a hat when he stops being an ass.
Okay. My hair is offending you. I'll wear a hat.
It's a trade-off. My hair is offending you, and your childish behavior is offending me. So when you stop acting like an ass, I'll wear a hat. How about that?
Well,
Thank you.
Well, I hope he listens to this interview, but I'm sure he won't. But whatever, I did my part. But,
well, thanks for coming on, Steph.
Thank you so much.
If you ever have any issues, you're going to send me the blogger and that you're
absolutely.
the column that you're
I am going to send it to
you. But if you have any more
issues,
now, feel free to hit me up because I'll bring you back on the show ASAP to.
Okay. Well, you'll be the first to know. Like I said, you're on my mailing list, so as soon as it happens. This is like the news. You know it as soon as it happens. And I'll send you a separate email if I need to reach you right away. So, before the blog even goes up.
Cool.
And I'll let you know what's going on if there's any problems. But
yeah.
We'll see.
Awesome.
Anyways, thanks so much and have a good night.
You too. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
Bye.
Bye-bye.